in the name of East Wall North Dock Branch, Dublin Central.
Good evening, Mick Keegan, East Wall. People with disability have fared very badly in the latest budget and in general since the recession began. Facing cuts in social welfare payments like disability allowance and carers payments, they have been hit by reduced funding for CE and FOSS schemes and cutback in special need assistance in schools. Many will also be affected by changes in medical card system and in the drug payment programme. We need to ensure that children and adults with disabilities do not suffer during this recession. 1 in 4 people with disability are at risk of poverty because of the extra cost of living with a disability. The National Disability Authority says that the cost of a person living with a disability is €40 a week, so they can't afford to take the cuts in social welfare payments. Mary Harney has identified a further $450 million in cuts to the health budget for 2010. Government needs to give instructions to the HSE to honour their commitments to people with disability and to ensure that their services are not affected by any more health service cuts. Commitment had been made to people with disability under the National Disability Strategy, and as recently as October, they were renewed in the programme for government. But the commitment cannot be honoured unless the funding is put in place to ensure that the HSE and the voluntary service providers can continue to provide the service in 2010. The underfunding of disability services in Ireland goes back for decades. So despite the fact that during the boom years investment was made in services, it is still the case that demand and needs for services outstrip the resources available to the HSE. This is why we still have children waiting for years for speech and language therapy, occupational therapists and other essential early intervention services. We cannot fail these children simply because they have the misfortune of being born during a recession. Not when we are willing to spend billions bailing out banks, developers and ferrying ministers around in limousines. Take the example of cuts backs in special needs assistance in schools. This has potential to undermine mainstreaming the education for children with disability. This has been one of the big achievements over the last decade. It will potentially take us back to a system of segregation schooling where children with a disability are not supported in attending their local, national and secondary schools. This has a knock-on implication for that child as they reach adulthood and the likelihood of them taking up mainstream training or employment places. I'm just finished, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
The National Disability Strategy was launched in 2005 with much fanfare and great promise for people with disability and their families. Without sufficient funding behind it, legislation passed like the Disability Act of 2005 has not gone far enough to ensure appropriate services for people with disability. Government needs to ring-fence funding to ensure the services are delivered, meaning that funding could not be diverted away from services and to other health areas, as has happened over the past few years to the tune of £171 million. People with a disability and their families expect and deserve to have the right to health and education honoured by the state. Government has failed to do this, and what progress has been made in service provision and living standards to people with disability is now being eroded through cuts already imposed and the threat of more cuts and hardship for this group. I amend this motion to the thing. Thank you very much.